Hello, everybody. My name is Paul Cutzinger, and I work on the engineering team for Internet Explorer. And my team is responsible for the user experience. Today, I want to walk you through a handful of our features and talk about some of the, we'll go a little bit deeper on why we built them and what we found after building them and how we've seen real users interact with them. So let's run through a couple here fast. So the first part of this is, throughout the product cycle, we gather data. We're learning about our users and about our features and how they work. And I want to talk through who we get our data from. First one is power users. These are the folks that use features very, very deeply, or they are sort of the technical neighbor. They're the person in the neighborhood that helps you configure your machine and knows all the ins and outs of things. Not necessarily people like us, developers and all that, those kinds of folks who are often power users. But they can also just be people who are really genuinely interested and dive in deep. Okay? Novice users. This is most people. Most people use the features on a sort of a surface level. And the hard part about catering to them is there's such a wide range of usage patterns that they have. Like some people will very, very much use favorites in one way, and a whole other class of people use favorites in a different way. So it's, you start to see trends where you'll see across the spectrum of folks, a lot of features get used a little bit. And so we have to figure out how to hone in on these different folks and make sure we solve their particular needs. Developers. Developers are what makes the whole of the browsing experience work, right? You have all the websites that you go to, and the browser is just a way to get from site. So we need to do a couple things. One is make sure that they can build the best web pages possible. And the other is make sure that we can integrate those experiences into the overall IE user experience for the other users that we have. And then IT pros. So these are the folks that are in corporations, and they run the IT departments, and they figure out what software they're going to deploy, and they think a lot about how to train their folks on how to use the software, and they're very sensitive to the cost of retraining people. And so one of the things we think about when we think about these folks is how easy is it for the feature to be adopted, and how much of a learning curve is there? How often will I have to call help support and those kinds of things? Of course, we look at all the folks here in America, but today, for example, we ship 25 languages internationally, and that'll keep growing. So there's an around-the-world population, and there's a lot of differences. We have to think about how folks behave differently in different countries and different locales. Okay, so how do we collect the data? One way is we go into the lab. So we have rooms, and they've got the one-way mirror, and somebody will sit in the room, and they'll work on their, a participant will come in, they'll work on the computer, and we'll have them do tasks. We'll ask them to do 1, 2, 3 things. And then there'll be a usability engineer on the other side of the glass, monitoring everything they do, timing the time it takes to get clicks done, monitoring the success, did they actually accomplish the task. And some of the things we look at here are not necessarily which features did they use and all that kind of thing. It's more about, we said we want you to email this page to a friend. Did they achieve it? If they did achieve it, how? And sometimes it's by using the features we wanted them to use, and sometimes they have their own creative ways of doing it. So we watch both of those and figure out how to best sort of optimize our features and to do that. So that's the lab. The one thing to know about the lab is it's a very small number of users. We've done a couple hundred lab studies. So in many ways, it's not statistically significant, right? Because we try to pick people from a variety of backgrounds and regions and things like that. But it's a very small number. So we have to sort of watch our data from here to look into more statistical significant answers. Here's an example of a participant in the lab. You can see that her task here was to look up the word bouillabaisse, and here she's using an accelerator to do that. So you can see how we've got the camera watching her and watching the monitor and what she's doing on the screen. The next thing is we have field studies. So we deploy the product out to a bunch of families around the country, and they live with it. They live with it for months, 6 months in this case. And they do their normal everyday things. It has to be on their main machine. And they send us, we call them send us smiles. So there's a little button that they can click, and they send a smile, and it captures everything that they've been doing, and they can type into it. And they can also send a frown. So they can tell us when they like things and when they don't like things. So this is good because it's much more longitudinal. We get a feel for, on the first day they had these kinds of issues, but on the 30th day and on the 90th day they had different sets of issues, or those issues went away. And we can start to see that switch from just exploring the product and trying to see what's new in it to actually using it and doing their normal day-to-day routines. We can also follow up. We can fly over and talk to them and actually interview them and figure out what they were actually thinking when they did these different things. So it's kind of nice that way. Here's some example of what the folks, they sent us back in these messages and say, here's what we thought about the product and all that kind of stuff. Next is community feedback. There's a lot of ways to get community feedback for us. We certainly see a lot in blogs and forums, responses to our own blog. There's a Connect database for folks to enter bugs. There are different sorts of beta and pilot programs. So we'll roll out to a set of corporations or to a set of web developers or these kinds of things and get feedback from a larger community. And this is how we start to bring more of the statistical significance into the product, a little bit more. Then there's instrumentation. And a couple key channels for this. One is Watson data. So if you were ever to crash or anything like that, you can send a report back in, and we get that, and we can figure out what's going on and trend out, like, why are people crashing, and figure out how to fix those problems. There's also this thing we call SQUIM, which is service quality monitoring. And that is a part of Vista, and on XP, you can choose to do it with IE as well. And this actually sends in click data for what people do in the browser. So you can see how many times you click on the back button or how many times you click in the address bar and those kinds of things. And then we actually get a very large volume of data through that, so we sample it down. And that sort of backfills the other data that we were getting through these other sources. OK. And then there's a variety of other things that we might use too, like a focus group. You might go out and you might talk to a group of people in Chicago and San Francisco and New York or something like that and start to get their feel. Trying different designs on folks, eye tracking, there's a few of them. Well, we need all these approaches because they fit together into one picture that gives us a good feel for what the product's going to be like and what it's going to need. So the lab gives us a good feel for first impressions, discoverability, whereas the field gives us a wider range of situations. So one of the things that comes out of the field is somebody's got a certain kind of printer, certain kind of monitor, and different kind of hard drive, something that we might not have in our lab. And you start to feel how this whole thing fits together, the different drivers and all this kind of stuff. And they might use the product differently than we do internally. Then instrumentation gives us the very large samples and helps us get the statistical significance. OK. So how much data did we get? It's quite a bit. In the lab, we got about 170 hours. There's almost 2 million users worth of data, and that's after we've sampled it down. So there's a ton of data there. And the community feedback is also quite big. You can see there's 2,400 threads on the IE news group. We have a set of folks who are the MVPs, and they are most valuable professionals. They go in and they help us go through all these feeds and respond to folks and help them understand what's going on. But then we get that information and we can actually go pull it in. OK. So let's talk more about what's actually happening in IE8. So if we look at the top 20 commands, 18 of them are navigation and tab browsing. This includes things like clicking on a link in the browser, using the address bar, using the search box, switching between tabs, creating a new tab, all those things that help people get from where they are to some other site. Then there's an interesting one that popped up, which was copy. Turned out to be our 12th most used command. And we got looking into that one, like, what are people doing with copy all the time? And I'll get into it when we get into the accelerators, but people are selecting copy, paste, and they're trying to bring their current page and the data on it to some other page. So either they want to email it, or they want to look something up, or they want to map it, want to do these kinds of different things. Okay. So let's start rolling through the different features. The address bar. one of the themes you'll see in all of our navigation, features is 80% of the time that people wanted to navigate, they were actually navigating back to a place they've already been. So we looked hard at, well, what are the ways that people navigate today, and how can we help them get back to the places they've already been more easily? So here in the address bar, I can type in a couple letters. So here I start typing. The address bar has a couple different sections. This first section here is, let's do this. There we go. This first section here is the websites that I typed in directly. So I actually typed in Microsoft.com, like Windows, Internet Explorer, videos, ASPX. And so I can get back to that quite quickly. Then here are the items with MI in my history, and then my favorites. So a couple things about this. One is we wanted to see what do people actually use when they click through this. And it turns out they use the first item in each section. And it sort of is a exponential curve of use the first item a lot, and then it goes down, and then the next first item goes down, and the next first item goes down. So we toyed with, well, should we put the first item of this first item here, the first typed URL, and then the first history item and the first favorite all up together so that the top three are right next to each other? And it turned out that it just made it harder for people to find things, because what they really want to do is click the first item. And they actually will just type more letters until the first item is something that they find interesting. So having these sections makes it more scannable for folks, so they can go, oh, here's the first item of this section, the first history, the first favorites, et cetera. OK. Another thing you can see is there's shortcut keys that we actually explain them to folks so that they can actually learn to use Shift-Enter and these kinds of commands. These are things that today only power users use, like Control-Enter. A lot of people don't know that you can just type a word and then hit Control-Enter, and it puts the www and the .com around it. And there's no way for a normal user to discover that, because you have to either know somebody who knows that or go through the options dialog and see that there's a way to set that or that it is set. So most people never learn that. Here, we're trying to bring those kinds of speed enhancements to everyday users so they can get the Shift-Enter. They can also see more of those, because all of those kinds of shortcut keys are down in the bottom here. Just tell people what's going to happen when they do them. Those together sort of lead into this part about making it easy for people to move into the product and start using it. So from IE6 or 7 to IE8, we want to make sure that when you type in the address bar, it just works. And it should work the way you're used to it working, because you do that all the time. And this is certainly a particular concern of IT pros. They don't want to deploy something throughout their enterprise that is going to cause all their users nightmare and headache. So this is sort of it sort of layers on the new parts of the experience. In fact, we see that over the course of about 5 days, people start using the feature more and more and more. The first couple of days, they just navigate. Then they start to recognize, oh, there are history items. There are favorite items. And they realize something's happening there. Or they see the hit highlighting. And they go, oh, when I type a couple letters, it's actually searching through different parts of the address. So like if I were to type, here I type CH, and I'm actually looking for championships. So but right now I've got BNCA, chopping blocks, chip in a chair. If I start typing more letters, it narrows down, and eventually I get down to the thing I'm after. So it's a way for folks to do what they normally do, but then get the advantages of the new features. A couple other things are, we noticed, here, I'll do this one, triple door. Oh, looks like I already deleted it. So earlier I had mistyped tripledoor.com, and this happens a lot. Folks type something into there, they miss a letter, they add a letter, do something like that, and then it's stuck there, and they don't know how to go into the registry and go find this thing, and delete it, and all these other kinds of crazy things that some small number of people would actually go and bother to do. Now what they can do is just go, oh, I don't want that, and just delete it. So this really does a couple things. We actually implemented it because we were very concerned about privacy throughout the product, and we've built a bunch of features around privacy. And so for this, we said, well, what if I'm presenting, and I'm showing somebody a website, and I don't want them to see what I typed in the address before? So I better be able to hit the delete button. So we called it over-the-shoulder privacy. There's somebody looking over your shoulder, seeing what you're doing. There's a way for you to not have those issues come up. It turns out there's also a lot of folks that just like to be tidy. They don't like wrong misspelled items and things in their way and the noise. And some of them would go into the favorite center and actually go through it every once in a while and start cleaning out their favorites. Very, very few would do that very much. But here, it's very straightforward and simple for folks just to find the one they want and delete it. And so we're seeing that like 13% of the clicks in here are actually from somebody deleting an item, just cleaning it up. OK. So there's address bar. Alt tab. Back to the deck. One of the things we also thought about when we think about speed of the product, we've been talking about speed of real-world use and what actual people do. And what we can do in our own UI is help people get things done with fewer actions. We started with calling it fewer clicks, but it turns out that it's a little bit more than fewer clicks because it's how far you have to move the mouse. It's how much you have to think about, all right, I'm using one feature. I know how it works, and I have to realize that there's some other feature that I need to go use. Like, for example, with the deleting it, you'd have to go, OK, I see the item in the address bar. I don't want it, so I guess I'd have to go to the favorite center, find the item in history, and then delete it. So by having fewer actions, meaning it's all just right there, we can get things done more quickly. OK. So relevancy. This is our chart of how people chose items out of the list. And to read this chart, all the information over on the left is how often people click the first item in a section. And then as you move to the right, it's how often people click an item further down the list. It actually tilts up towards the end because the fourth and fifth items are combined together into one point. So it actually trends down from third, fourth to fifth. So here's what we saw. History is used very, very often. Previous addresses, right up here. Top favorites used quite a bit. Feeds, not as much. And in fact, feeds never really tapered off. It sort of looks like from this that people couldn't figure out which feed they really wanted from the list. There was no sort of, the relevancy boost wasn't pushing the item that they wanted to the top. So we looked at this more, and there's a few reasons for it, we think. One is when people look for a feed, they're not actually looking for, very often, they're not looking for the title or the URL of the feed and those kinds of things. So they don't just go into something that's very focused because the titles are constantly changing. And then, so really they're looking for the meat of the feed. The other part is they very rarely don't think to search for feeds inside the address bar because they're thinking about going somewhere when they're in the address bar. And when they want to read a feed from some site, it's not so much that they want to get back to a particular item in the feed. What they really want to do is go see what's the latest, greatest thing from that site. So it turned out feeds weren't super helpful in the address bar. So we took them out. And the good news about that is it gives us more space to show the typed URLs, which is one of the ones that people actually use fairly deeply. They'll actually click the fourth and fifth item in the previously typed URLs. OK. So another feature I want to talk about is web slices. There's a pattern of usage where somebody will consistently go back to the same site and check it frequently. So you can imagine this with Hotmail or any email or stocks or sometimes the weather. There's just sites that you just, Facebook, you'll see what's the latest, what's happening. So we've built this feature that will let you do that. Up here in the favorites bar, here's the favorites bar. Oop, go over here, I guess. So we've got a couple different things. Here is this is from the IE blog, and it's just a normal RSS feed. And when you have a normal RSS feed, we just show you the feed items in the list. And if any new posts happen, then the title of the web slice will go bold. Like you see these here are bold. Something has changed since I've last looked at them. Let's see what's going on here. So here's Hotmail. I can check my mail. There we go. Oh. These are interactive, so I can type into them. Let's see what's going on here. Wow, I'm missing letters. There we go. OK. So with Hotmail, I can see my mail items. I can see them right away. I can take, I don't really care to have the 1-800-Flowers so I can delete that right here. Or if I want to, I can just go straight through and go see my full Hotmail account. So it gives me the sort of top level, what's happening right now, and then I can go on my way. Here's an example with One Riot, same kind of a thing. In One Riot, I can see the videos they have, I can search for more videos, or I can go off to their site. MSN, they've got one here. This is it's this section here actually on their page. So I can see all the different sites that they would show off in their showcase. So let's go add one of these. I want to show you what it's like to get these in. So I'm going to Dig. Dig's a site to help folks rate popular sites or sites that are interesting on the web. And so it's a great one to see what sort of is the latest and greatest. When I mouse over one of these sections in the web page, you can see this green web slice icon shows up. It also shows up here in the top of the browser, so I don't have to mouse around to find it. But as I mouse into here, I click it. I can add this to my favorites bar. It shows up at the front of my address bar. And again, it's bold. And so whenever there's something new to show, I'll see it. And no matter where I am, whatever site I'm on, I can come back and see the latest Dig slices. So as you're thinking about websites and your website, how do you want to get people back to your site? And what's the interesting part of your site that people come back to frequently and want constant data from, want the updates from? OK. OK. So about a quarter of our people use web slices on the first day, and about a third have 2 web slices. The breadth of web slice offers is really important. These are very sort of personal things to folks because they want it to be their services. It's not like we could just ship a bunch of web slices that we think are the best things ever. It needs to be, I like Facebook, so I want to have my Facebook web slice. Or I like Dig, so I want to have my Dig web slice. Your customers of your websites should be able to have this kind of a thing too, and then install them for themselves and get going. So we want to have a wide range of web slices for folks to use. Let's go on to favorites bar. So we started talking about favorites bar. Yes? So the question was, are we planning to have a best of slices website so that other people can go and see what's going on and see what's happening? Yeah, let me show you that real fast. So it's called IE Add-ons. And you can go up here and you can see what's happening right now. So there's web slices, accelerators, search providers. All of those things are posted here. And then the community can rate them. And you can sort through them, search through them, all that good stuff. And right from here, you can add any of these you want. So if I want to add the stumble upon web slice, I can just add it here. And now I've got the buzz on stumble upon. OK, thank you. All right, so favorites bar. We had the links bar in, it was on by default in IE6, and then we had it in IE7, but it wasn't on by default. We've done quite a few things in this release to bring it back and to make it more useful for folks. So there's a couple parts about it. One is, it's really a space for people to put the things they use most frequently, commonly clicked items. So, of course, you can put your favorite up there. And we find that clicking on a favorite in the favorites bar is twice as fast as clicking on a favorite in the favorite center. You can just click it and go. We support several different kinds of things here. There's the web slice that I've shown you. Then there's the feeds, your favorites, and you can even create folders. So you can have a whole bunch of favorites into one, favorites or web slices or feeds in one grouping. So you might have some work-specific folder, and you fill it up with that, or personal ones, whatever. Okay. The other thing we've done on the favorites bar is we've made sure that there's a way to have one-click access. So if I go back to, let's go to some site. Here I'm at CNN.com. I want to add this to a favorite. I click the Add button, and it just shows up. There's nothing else for me to do, no dialogues in the way. Having a very low resistance to entry is important for the favorites bar because it's for the people who don't want to do a lot of management. If they want to do a lot of management, there's the favorite center and all the things I might want to do in the favorite center. And all that's still there. That's where I can go through to rename it and organize it into folders, et cetera. The other part is on smaller screens, like this projector here is 1024 by 768, so it's a little bit smaller than I have on my normal machine. At some point, the favorites start to go into an overflow, so I can go see other item stuff here. And that's all good and fine. Everything still works. I can still see the web slice and everything. But I might be the kind of person who wants to see more of them. So I can do short titles, or I can do icons only. Or I can go through and rename them and make them shorter, those kinds of things. So how we get more folks in there. Great. So back to the deck. The other part about the favorites is that it's a way for people to see what's happening without having to navigate. So those web slices that when they turn bold, you can just, while you're doing your other stuff, you can see that something has changed, and there's an indicator of that, instead of having to actually flip over to the site. Couple differences in the way that people use this versus the Favorite Center. The Favorite Center is good for overall management and seeing your whole list. The other part of the Favorite Center is the Feeds Center. I guess I should show you that so you can see what it looks like. In the Favorite Center, there's feeds. And a lot of times what people will do here is they'll open up a feed, and then they'll just read through all the new stuff, and then they'll go to the next feed, and they'll read through all the stuff. And so it's much more like an email kind of experience where I've got what's new, and I can see what's happening. And that's a different usage pattern than just clicking here, because this is much more about, oh, something is really hot off the presses, I want to see what it is. So Favorites bar in general is about getting to something very quickly for quick return versus the other features we have for getting them back. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about copy. That was one of the top 20 commands. This is what people do after they do copy. So the first command would be copy, and then the next they do select tab, or copy paste, copy back, etc. And you can see that there's a couple different patterns that emerge from that. One is what people are doing is they take some text and then they go to another web page. So they'll either select a different tab, or they'll hit back, or they'll close that tab to get to another tab, new tab, start a new navigation to get to a website. So they're copying something and taking it to another website. There's another one where they actually copy something and take it off to Word or a client email application, something like that. So we went after the one that said, I'm taking this to some other website. How can we make this experience better? Here we go. So let's go. Triple door. So here's a club in Seattle. They've got cool little artists and all that good stuff. If I want to find out where it's at, I can just select this text here. This is the accelerator icon. So whenever I've selected text, I can see that and then click the button. Or I could right-click, because some people select text and then they immediately right-click before they think of doing anything else, because they're very used to going select text, right-click, copy. So right-click brings up the same menu. And then I can map. So I can right here see the map of where this place is at without having to actually leave what I'm doing right now and then go off to some other site. At the same time, I can go off to some other site right now. I can go, okay, I actually want to get directions here, bird right map. So this is another entry point into the mapping feature that we might have. I can also email this off. So if I click here, it'll go off, compose an email, push all this information into it, and I can type up a note, say, hey, come meet me here. So, but if I were to compare that to what you used to have to do, it was select, copy, go to a new tab. I'll go to another new tab. Go to maps.live.com. So I think you can get it. I have to go there. I have to type something in the address bar or pick something off the favorites bar, get the site, wait for the site to load up. Even if I don't wait for the site to load up, paste it in, get rolling. So it takes more steps, more actions, and certainly more time. Okay. Don't think we really need to wait for that to come back. So that's accelerators in a nutshell. What we're really trying to do there again is take something that is very common that people do, get into their normal workflow, and help them get to their insight that they're looking for. So here we go. Search box. When we looked at our data for search box and search box usage, we found that 70% of the people have more than one search provider. So at first we were thinking, well, everybody just uses their favorite search, Yahoo, Live, Google, whatever it might be. It turns out that's not quite right, because there's a wide range of things that you might want to search. So for example, I might want to search for products in Amazon, or I might want to search for items in eBay, et cetera, or Wikipedia articles. So let's look at the search box then. So here's my search box. And let's say I start looking for a word. I've got a couple things here showing up. First of all, it's got live search suggestions. So these are suggestions, in this case from Live, because I'm using the Live search provider. If I were to flip over to Amazon, I get Amazon search results. And they use different information, and they have a very customized experience for their customers. It really speaks to the core value of their product. So they've got things like the price, the discount it is, ratings from their users, and when you click it, it goes directly to the Buy Now page. So I'm right there. I'm ready to take action and ready to buy the thing. Live, they don't have the price and all those kinds of things, so it's not about that. But they do have things like, so I type the weather, and I can see instant answers like that. So I've got weather or stocks or even things like just general questions, 2 + 2 is 4. So every provider can do the thing that's customized best for them, that's tailored to them. So let's see if we do Elvis. I've got pictures of Elvis there. And in Wikipedia, it'll take me directly to the articles that I have, and I can actually see, oh, I can look at different albums, and all the disambiguation kinds of things start to play out in their search suggestions. So this is a way to let users very quickly do the kinds of searches they want to do on their favorite sites. And then for the sites, they can expose the information that they really want to expose to their customers, and then draws them back into their site. Okay. So there's a couple parts to the search box. One is the search box providers, where they're with their information. Another is the quick pick at the bottom, and another is the history. There's a section where you can actually see sites you've already been to, because, as I said before, we know that 80% of the time that people are navigating, they actually go back to a site they've already been to. So a lot of times, when you want to go to some website, you'll actually just search for it all over again, instead of trying to remember where it was or trying to find it in your favorites or all those kinds of things. So exposing them there helps folks get back to where they're looking. All right, and for those of you that have sites and are looking for ways to deliver more value, with search providers, when you're thinking about building how you're going to build out a search provider and what content you'd show, think about what reinforces your core value. It's more important, I think, to really think about the users thinking about the thing that I want from your site. So I want to buy a book, or I want to buy a product, so show me the information that helps me make that decision, versus just throwing a bunch of search results into it. And you have the flexibility to do that, so go for it and tie it right in. What we're looking for overall is you've got an IE experience, and people use the product. You can see how they navigate through the address bar, navigate through favorites, use search box. So the more we can put their favorite sites and services into that normal user flow, I think the better it'll be for both of our customers, because they'll have the experience they ultimately want with less work. Okay, let's look at tab browsing. So first data point, we actually checked it, but it turns out to be true, is that the more you use the product, the more you have tabs. This is one of those ones where there's a wide range of people who use tabs, and they use tabs in different ways. There are certainly some people who have a window, and they just have one tab, and that's it. Then there are other people who have, well, about as many tabs as you can imagine. They just keep adding tabs, and they just keep going. There seems to be a threshold around whatever the size is that you keep your window. So if you keep your window maximized, and you can hold 6 tabs without going into the overflow or getting too scrunched up, then people have about 5 to 6 tabs. So there's sort of a natural selection of, I like to have my tab row nice and full, but not over full. And so people sort of clean up a little bit or reuse tabs in some ways. There's a pattern that we saw with more of the power user crowd and the people who really have glommed onto tabs. Here's the usage of it, by the way. And that pattern is to go to a site and queue up pages to read. So let's look at that experience. Okay, oop, I went back. This button here. Okay, so let's go here. So here I'm on a search site, and here I'll be on a news site. Okay, so I'm on my way. I'm going to look up something about dogs. And I'm like, okay, I want to read about this one, and this one. So what I've done is I've gone down a page of search results, and I've queued up other pages for me to read about dog. And what I'll do is I'll go, okay, is this a good article or not? Is it interesting? And I can scroll around it and go, okay, done with that one. And I do whatever I want to do with it. I take action on it. I add it as a favorite, or I just say, I'm done, and I turn it off. Now, what happens is there's a group up here. So you can see this green colored. All these are sort of related. These are separate. If I want to go through news and do the same kind of a situation, I can go click, 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 and they get this darker blue color. So now I've got two different groups. If I were to walk away from my computer, or if I got distracted by the phone, or actually distracted by work, or these other kinds of things, then I can come back to the product very easily and go, okay, back where I was. Here's my dog research, and here's my news. The other part about this is, as I use it and close these things down, we do what you would actually expect naturally. So here, if I close this last tab, what will happen is I stay in the dog group. And the other thing is, if I restore that tab, it comes back and it has the group with it. And I can manage whole groups together. I can just say, just delete all these. I'm done. I'm done with that activity. I'm done doing that task. And if you save, another thing that power users do sometimes is they'll create a folder, and then they'll put sites inside a folder. And you can open all those, and when you open that folder full of tabs, they become a tab group. Close. Control click or middle mouse click, or the two that get used the most are control click and right click, open a new tab. So, but middle click on the scroll wheel will also get it. Okay. Let's go back to the deck. So, new tab page. The new tab page is where you go to start navigating fresh. Sometimes people reuse their current tab, so they'll be on the dog search site and they say, I'm done with it. They'll just type something in the address bar and keep going or hit a favorite. Other times they want to keep that around, so they create a new tab. Well, it's kind of interesting because when you create a new tab, it's one of the few times that we really understand what the user wants to accomplish. We know they're about to navigate, and we have a chance to surface that stuff to them. So let's take a look at that. So here's the new tab page. We want to make sure that your address bar, search box, and all your favorites work as they always work and are always available to you, because that's what people will do most of the time. Click one of those things. But there's a couple other things that might happen. Let's say I was looking at a tab, and I close it because I'm done with it. Oh, I wasn't done with it. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. So here I've got this dog breeds. I close it. I go to new tab. And now I've got dog breeds, and I can just bring it right back. So that's a normal, natural pattern for folks was to think they lost it, go to new tab, start searching for it again because they thought they've lost it. And so to have us surface it right here was helpful for them to get it back. A couple other things you can do. In private browsing. So we have in private browsing over in the safety menu, and you can go there and you can, this is a mode of the browser where you can surf around and it won't keep track of any of your history. So there's no record of what you've been doing. So when people want to start in private browsing mode, this is a great time for them to actually discover that. The other one is accelerators. So before I showed you, I can copy an address and then go paste it into a website. So a common pattern for that is select, right-click copy, new tab, start to type in the address. So if you didn't see it when you were right-clicking or you didn't see the little icon, now when you click New Tab, you might see, oh, I can map with Live. That's the thing I was about to go do, and then you can just map it with Live. So the spirit behind this was the whole of the screen should help you get where you want to go next, right? We should make sure that it's, first of all, very easy to go in the address bar. Some of the very early designs we had drew too much attention down into the new tab page. We actually want it to be balanced so that you see the whole of the product. And that's why we tried to match the colors and those kinds of things to make you feel like it's a whole piece. When it was a more stark color and this title was really bright, people very often got shocked by it and didn't actually do what they normally wanted to do with the address bar. At the same time, have exposure to these commands that are normally off the beaten path. It doesn't make a lot of sense to have reopen and close tabs always available in your face. They are always available from the right-click menu here, and I can reopen the close tabs, and I can see them all. So they're always top-level available, but they're not shown and in your face until we understand that you have some context about what you want to do. OK. So good. Here's a fairly early design. In this one, we had the problem where people didn't know what these sections were. They didn't know what a web activity was, or start private browsing, or reopen close tabs. And so they would sort of skim the first little bit and go, I'm done. And they would just never use the page from then on. They'd never look at it again. It also didn't help a lot that in IE7, there was effectively an error-looking page when you started a new tab. People thought, did something go wrong? Did something break? It was almost like a 404 kind of a thing. So the newer design is the one you saw where it actually has the content that people might actually want to take action on in the page. And we see a pretty dramatic change in how often people use the page. And once they do, we've ordered it the way that they actually use it. So instead of having reopen close tabs last and hidden, it's now first and open, because it turns out to be that's what people do the most when they navigate to this page. And they click something off of it. OK, I already talked through tab grouping. So that hit navigation and tab browsing. Let's talk about compatibility view. So with IE8, we have much wider range of, well, we have complete CSS 2.1 standards compliance, and we're doing a lot of work to move the browser forward in standards compliance. As a part of that, we have to also support what happened in IE7, where websites would design for IE7, and they've tested it, made it work, and they want it to work there. So there's a few things that we can do. In the first several tiers are not on the end user's shoulders. So the first thing is the website itself can just say, you know what, I want to be standards mode, and they can have their website work in standards mode and just make it work, make it show. The other thing that they can do is they can put a tag on the page, and the tag on the page or on the server will say, no, make me work like IE7 until I'm ready to go to standards mode. And then the user doesn't have to deal with anything either because the website said, here's what it is. So it's in the developer's control. Then there are some pages where the developer doesn't go through and do that, and the user might run into things that they don't like, and they want to make it show in IE7's mode, IE7's compatible mode. So let's take a look at what that looks like. First of all, it could be a fairly daunting concept, and I certainly wouldn't want to explain to all of our users that there are these two modes and that they have to deal with it. I'd rather for the whole site just to work and they get the experience they really want. So we tried a bunch of versions of how to explain this feature by the typical sort of you have as a part of a wizard up front, or it's a part of a welcome to the product tour, those kinds of things. And none of them worked because they were dissociated from any real value that the user would see, and they didn't realize what they would use it for. And by the time they actually ran into something later on, they had forgotten about it. So here's a site that's not laid out quite properly. This site has been designed explicitly for IE7, and so it's rendering in IE7 mode. I'm sorry, it's rendering in IE8 in standards mode by default, because that's what we do, but it was designed for IE7. So this menu here shouldn't be like this, and it's a little bit messed up. Many users will just use the site anyway. They'll just scroll through it, click, move on their way, and go, oh, looks a little weird, but didn't quite notice, right? Some will go, well, that's kind of weird, that's kind of messed up, I think something happened. And what they'll do is they'll hit refresh. So now when you hit refresh, this balloon pops up and says, hey, there's this compatibility view button. It'll help you improve the display of this web page. And it'll, excuse me, and it gives them a way to discover the button that's right next to it. So most of the time they hit refresh. If it doesn't do what they want to do, they can then click the compatibility view button, and then now we show the page in IE7 mode. Yeah, question back there. Which one? OK, I'll read it to you. Click the compatibility view button to help improve the display of web pages that are designed for older browsers. And then when you actually click on it, it now says, ie8demos.com is now running in compatibility view. So it's telling you that this tab here is running in compatibility view. Yeah? Yeah, so the question was, well, remember that setting for the website? Yes, it does. Once you put a site into that mode, it'll stay there for next time. Now, the other angle on that, so for the end user, they're good and they're golden. They're having a good experience from then on. The developer, they can add those tags I was describing earlier, and it'll do what the developer said. Because the developer's the one who's written the site and tested it and done everything they need to do. So they can force it either to go into standards mode or to the other. Yep, question back. Standards. Yeah. OK, so the point was, you can certainly imagine people mailing in to the webmaster saying, hey, why won't you get your site to work in IE standards mode? Yep, yep. I suspect that will happen. I also think that it's pretty quick and pretty easy for website developers to look at their site in IE8, and if there happen to be problems where they're not ready to be standards compliant yet, they can throw in this tag, and it's very lightweight. In fact, we have a session after the talk here. If you want to come by the lab, you can come look at your site, and we'll walk you through it and see if there's anything you need help with. Yeah? Yeah, you're welcome. OK. So it comes up twice. So as a part of our research, once wasn't quite enough because it didn't catch people, and 3 and 4 got really annoying. So 2 was sort of the magic number to get people's attention. And what we looked for there is retention. So if you saw it a couple times, and then later you encountered another site and didn't see the button, would you know what to do? And after 2, the vast majority of people knew what to do. So that's the number we picked. OK. So a couple things we learned about this. In the beta, we had very different things. Like, for example, we had an emulate IE7 button. I don't know if you guys have seen this. How many people have looked at the beta and saw how it was there? OK, a couple. So in the beta, we had just explain to you. We had a button down here in the commands bar, and it had the words emulate IE7. And when you clicked it, it put the whole you rebooted the browser, you closed it and reopened the browser, and the whole browser was in that compatibility mode. And so a few things that we learned from that. First of all, that was really annoying. You really want it to work for that site, and once you set a site, it just keeps working on its way. So that was the first part. The other was it had terrible discoverability. It was very easy for people that knew about it to explain it to somebody else. They could say, go click the emulate 7 button, and people could go, oh, I'll click the emulate 7 button. But it was very hard for anybody in their normal usage to ever find it, because it wasn't anything natural for what they would do. What people really do is hit refresh, or just try to use the site. So co-locating it up here next to the refresh button was important. And, excuse me, co-locating it up to the refresh button, and also giving that balloon tip to say what this is and help them realize there's a button right next to it. The other thing that we realized that it did is the emulate IE7 button was practically invisible to people because it wasn't where they were ever looking. This region up here, for most of your browsing experience, is out of sight and out of mind because you're looking at the address bar, you're looking at the page, and it's fairly low-key. But as soon as you want to hit refresh, you look up there, and all of a sudden, all those controls in that area become forefront. So it actually gives it quite a bit of prominence for those folks. Okay. So the question was, will we always need this? It's hard for me to predict how quickly sites will, well, two parts, how quickly people will move off of older browsers. And the more quickly people move off older browsers, the more quickly websites can, build all of their site for the standards web. And then the other part is, how quickly can the sites actually transition over? From what we've seen, it's going to that part can happen pretty quickly for many, many, many websites, because anybody who's actively engaged with their website, it's very easy to get it either working in the compatibility mode or upgraded to standards mode. So I don't know how long it would be there. I'm sorry, say it again? It's for both. The question was, is it primarily for intranets, or is it both for internet? It certainly is heavily used in intranets. What happens there is you've got a company who's built some system out, and they built it out years ago, and they're just trying to keep it working the same way it's always worked, and they want something that's very, very much backwards compatible. So for those reasons, I think it'll be there for quite a while. The cool part is we actually have a way for folks to see it in both ways. We can push forward. We can all start developing it in a standards way, and yet things will keep working. So, okay. So let me show you the malware page. All right, so I'm about to navigate to a page that's a known malware site. So our malware service said, malware, don't proceed. And this is the UI that we now show folks. And what we really want you to do is go to your home page. Just back away, get out, run away. So let me show you what we saw in our labs. Here is our previous malware page. And the colors on the screen are eye tracking. So what we do is we have a system, a machine set up, and it has cameras. And it'll watch your eyes, and as you stare at one spot, it glows more and more red, and you can track where everybody's moved. And then we build this composite image. So in our previous version, they didn't quite know what to do. And the thing that you're supposed to do is down here. So it's not even at the center of what they were looking at. And they basically look around all over here, and they go, there it is. And they click on it. Or they click the wrong thing and just try to go through it. So here's the eye tracking for the newer design. And you can see that it's very heavily concentrated on the link we actually want them to go through and click. It's kind of cool. OK, so then this is sort of the aggregate of those two. And you can see the difference in the same participant, how much tighter they got. OK. So I have a bunch of time for questions. To recap this, there's a couple things we really wanted to make sure we got out of IE. And I didn't show you all the features. I tried to go into a couple features a little more deeply than so go across all, so I can answer questions about others if you have. But in general, there's a theme about making it faster and easier. Fewer clicks, less actions, less mouse movement, less features to learn. And then also, it's built on real-world usage. So instead of just saying, here's this really cool thing we would love to go build, it's who would use it, how would they use it, let's make sure that it's discoverable in the right ways and not in your way any other ways. And then how can we get your sites integrated into that holistic experience? Because what we don't want to have is sort of the seams between how you use the browser, how a person would use the browser, and then also use websites. We'd like that all to be sort of like married together nicely. So that's where the visual search providers, the accelerators, and web slices can come in. We'd certainly like the idea that instead of having to cut and paste, go up to the address bar and back down again, they can just go straight to your service directly from a page. So, questions? Yeah, in the back. It stays in that group. So let me repeat the question. Question is, hey, I'm in a tab group, and I want to, so let me add another tab to this tab group. And now I want to reuse this tab, right? I'm done with this or whatever. For a new subject. Yeah, so we don't. What we do is, while you're in this green tab group here, we'll continue to keep it as a part of the green tab group. You can ungroup this tab, and so it'll pull it out. Okay? But it takes an extra action to ungroup the tab. Generally, you're working in a tab. What people will do is they'll tend to finish out that task, and then they'll move on to the other. Or they'll leave it open, but they'll go on somewhere else to do others. Yeah. Other questions? Yeah. Okay. So the question is, do we have a way to turn phone numbers into links? Right? No. Yeah, we didn't have that then, and we don't have that. But accelerators is the way to get that. So if you're the kind of a service that helps you make internet calls or whatever it might be, user can select that and just use an accelerator and go straight to the site provider. Yep. Yep. Yeah, in the back. Right. Okay, so the question is, when gathering our data, and we gather data from our beta user customers or even our release candidate customers, how do we factor that in because we know those users are a little bit different? The truth is they are different. They tend to be early adopters, and they tend to be more on the power user side of things. And they also have more tolerance for problems to show up. Well, they'll also complain quite easily, but they unlike a normal user who would just go, what is this? And they just sort of back away and leave it. So yeah, we had to do work to calibrate the data we get from beta and from the release candidate and the tech betas that we also have, and sort of look at that in comparison to what we see in the labs and what we see in our field studies. And all those together sort of help us bias those out. We have another one too, which is we have a lot of people inside the company that self-host the product. And we have to take those biases away too, because we're all a very different user base than the normal user. Okay? But that does give us valuable information. It's just a question of how do we apply it to the whole of the data set. Yeah. Yep, another question. I see. So the question is, huh? Okay. So the question is, on my web page, is there a way for me to turn off accelerators so that people won't leave the website, right? Yep. So no, there's not. Wherever you can select and copy, they can do this. And if we did, what would happen is the user would copy and paste. It's the 12th use command. Like, people use it a lot. And if you have information that they're going to want to take to another site, they're going to do it. I think the difference here is they'll do it in a slightly different way. So if I'm looking at this and I want to say, what is a dog breed? Come here. So I can go translate this. I'm still on your page, and I'm doing the translation in a pop-up window. And if I get the answer I want right away, then I'm done and I'm back on your site. If I want to actually go do something with it, like an address, I actually want to go map it and print out the directions and all that kind of stuff, well, that's probably the next thing I wanted to do anyway. And so they probably would have left your site anyway in that moment. So. Okay. Okay. I see. So the next question is, can we populate that with our stuff, and specifically, we populate it with only our stuff? Right. So the answer there is, you can populate accelerators, yes, but not with only your stuff. You can add to it, and the user can choose which thing is their favorites and which one's their defaults. So I'd love to talk to you afterwards more about that experience so I can understand the scenario better. Yeah. Yep. Okay, so the question is, when you select some text, does it look at the underlying format of that and do something special with it? And so we don't. We pass the text off to the service, and a lot of the services do things. So they can look at it and go, this is an address, and parse it out and do whatever magic they work on their end. So we rely on the service to do that part of it. But they're all on your list, that's right. Yeah, so it's not like so the follow-up question there was, if I'm over a phone number, does it filter away all of the accelerators that are not related to phone numbers? And no, the answer is no. You might want to email the phone number. You might want to map it. I don't know, some mapping service might map phone numbers. I don't know what could happen. So yeah. Yep. Any other questions? Yeah, up here.
Several years ago, Microsoft did a whole slew of research for the Office product, and they changed and developed the ribbon.
Yep.
Some people love the ribbon. Some people hate the ribbon.
Yep.
Was there any discussion when you were working on IEA to use the concepts of the ribbon in the interface?
Okay. So the question was, in Office, they did a complete redesign and built out a ribbon solution for Office. And was there any effort on our part to look into the ribbon for the browser? So we've looked a lot at the ribbon and how it all works together. And there are a few things. One is, it's not just a straight take the ribbon, put it in a browser, because the ribbon is designed really specifically to solve a bunch of the content editing experiences that you see in Office. And that, for the most part, is a pretty different experience than you have on the web today. So to do something of that nature, we'd have to go look at what are the core problems that we have, and how can we solve those core problems in a new UI. And we want to make sure we have a tailor-fit solution, not just take the ribbon and put it in. So, yeah.
So the decision was no way.
To ship this. Right. Okay. Other questions? Great. Thank you very much. If you have any other questions, come on up. Appreciate it. Thank you. Come up.